and Tiki on a Friday here in New York City. And like I always say about Tiki Barber, when he's off, it's not because he's on vacation. It's because he's actually working. So he's on football assignment because, unfortunately for him, he's got to call a dopey preseason game over the weekend. Poor Tiki. And then after that, he's actually going to take a real vacation. So to fill in for Tiki Barber, we have brought in the hottest author in America right now. Everybody wants to talk to this guy. He knows all the secrets about Aaron Rodgers. We're talking about the best-selling author of Out of the Darkness, The Mystery of Aaron Rodgers, Ian O'Connor. Ian, thank you very much for sitting in for Tiki today.
Evan, it's great to be with you. I can't believe I've never met you until today. And so I've been a big fan of yours from afar, and thanks for having me.
Well, thank you very much for coming on. I have been speed reading your book, and what I mean by that is listening to your book, courtesy of an audio book. And we will certainly talk about it, and we'll talk about Rodgers, and we'll get to football throughout this program. But you have written many a book, okay? And I actually want to bring up one of the guys that you've written about before. And this popped into my mind last night. I was trying to stay up watching the Met game, and commercial breaks are always the most difficult for West Coast games because you could easily fall asleep. And so while I was watching the game, I was curious who was showing up for Yankees Old Timers Day. And I saw the list, and I saw they're honoring the 2009 Yankees, which is very, very cool. And I saw the list, and I was like, oh, okay, look, CeCe's going to be there. A-Rod's going to be there. And then I saw Derek Jeter. And I started thinking to myself, Derek Jeter is the king of this city over the last 40 years. There's nobody close. Eli isn't close. Even LT, as great as he was, isn't close in terms of just sheer popularity of what Derek Jeter accomplished on the field and what he accomplished off the field. He is the king. And at Yankee Stadium over the weekend, he's going to get a huge standing ovation. We are currently watching a baseball player that plays on his team in his city that from a talent perspective has already passed him. I mean, Aaron Judge is arguably one of the great players we've ever seen. And I started racking my brain thinking to myself, all right, Aaron Judge has 48 home runs. He leads the league. He's got an outside shot to win the Triple Crown. He's definitely going to win his second MVP. You could argue it should be his third MVP. Is there anything Aaron Judge could possibly do to surpass Derek Jeter?
I just think he needs to win one World Series.
Just one?
Yeah, because he is better. Everyone knows that. And I was thinking about this the other day, Evan. I've been watching baseball, so I'm turning 60 in a few days. I've been watching baseball seriously for 50 years. Peak Aaron Judge is the second best player I've ever seen. Barry Bonds would be the first. Now, this is post-Willie Mays, because I didn't really catch Willie Mays when he was a real player. Aaron Judge, he's just he's the first guy I've seen, maybe outside of Bonds, who when he doesn't hit a home run at the plate, his presentation at the plate is so overwhelming. When he doesn't hit a home run, I'm shocked. And one day, I was working for the New York Post as a columnist a couple years ago, and I'm at the game, and I'm looking out from the press box at center field, and I'm seeing a 6'7", 282-pound man playing Joe DiMaggio's position and doing it with grace and agility and athleticism. And I said to myself, I do not care what happens in this game. I am writing about that man playing that position because it's unbelievable. He's an NBA power forward playing center field without much problem at all. So I did. I think Stanton hit 2 home runs that day, and I ignored it. I just said, it's overlooked. It's like we've almost taken him for granted a little bit. It's just how amazing it is that a guy that size is that good and that agile that he could play center field for the New York Yankees. So he is, at his peak, the second best player I think I've ever seen, including Ohtani. When he's not pitching, I would still take Judge over Ohtani.
Ohtani's like a cheat code because of the pitching thing. You know what I mean? Like, yeah, we could all give that answer because when he pitches and hits, we've never seen it before, but it's almost cheating. It's almost cheating the idea of who's the greatest player you've actually ever seen. But I agree with you, and I think most people would agree that if Judge isn't number one, he's in that kind of short conversation. Like, for me, the only other guy I would put up there is Albert Pujols. I thought prime Pujols was, like, unbelievable to watch, but he was so different than Aaron Judge because while he did it for that same power, he also would never strike out, which to me was like a really impressive thing. But nevertheless, we all agree he's better than Jeter in terms of being a player. But you know why I'm not even sure one championship would surpass him in a lot of Yankee fans' eyes? I think Jeter's got the Jordan treatment in that we saw Derek Jeter win so much at such a young age that even though he only won the one World Series in the last decade of his career, he feels like the definition of a champion. And I don't know if one title would be enough for a lot of Yankee fans to say, oh, yeah, he surpassed the ultimate winner. The guy won 5 world championships, 4 of them in the first 5 years of his career. And what I'm saying isn't fair, by the way. I know that. Mm-hmm. But it also just kind of feels like the reality of the mystique of Jeter is almost impenetrable.
But I think the Yankee fan is smart enough to realize that if you transport Aaron Judge back to 96 and put him on that team, how many championships does Aaron Judge win? 5. Right? I mean, he as good as he is, are you telling me that Aaron Judge would not have won the same amount of rings as Derek Jeter? You know what, if he was on that team with the amount of support? Yeah. This is what killed A-Rod, okay? And I was the first time I met Alex Rodriguez was at the 1998 NBA All-Star Game at Madison Square Garden. I think that was Jordan's last one and Kobe's first one. Jeter was in the stands. They had just traded for Knobloch, and everyone thought this is going to be the greatest double-play combination ever. And Rodriguez was sitting with Jeter in the stands. And at halftime, I went over there because Jeter hadn't commented about the Knobloch acquisition. So I was talking to Jeter. Everyone was surrounding him. And Alex got completely ignored. He was standing by himself.
That must have driven him nuts.
Yeah. And I went over there and talked to him. He gave me some great stuff about how Derek Jeter is Joe Montana. He just got his Jerry Rice in Knobloch. Great quote and talking, but I remember seeing him alone because he was in Seattle, obviously, at the time, being ignored. Peyton Manning came rushing up to Jeter, shook his hand, and I remember thinking to myself, this guy wants the big market and the big stage, and he knows he's better than Derek Jeter, right. But it doesn't matter because he can't win the rings and wasn't winning the rings, and so I think that people realize baseball's different, and A-Rod told me this. If I played basketball, nobody would be talking about they'd be talking about me in a different context because I'd have 3 or 4 rings. Right. Barry Bonds would have had 5 or 6 rings because in basketball, you can give the ball to LeBron James at every possession. And in baseball, you may not have the ball hit to you. Pitchers may pitch around you. So your impact on winning and winning championships is a lot smaller than it is as opposed to an NBA 2 guard.
Oh, no doubt. But you know what hurt, I think, Alex, Barry, and Aaron Judge? I think Aaron Judge is in the same conversation. Fair or not, because it's a small sample size. They didn't perform in the postseason for a big part of their careers. Bonds eventually did. A-Rod eventually did. A-Rod eventually had the huge monumental playoff of 2009, which he'll be honored for over the weekend, and they don't win a World Series without him. That's why when you ask that question, hey, if Aaron Judge is on the late 90s Yankee teams, you don't think they win every World Series? Well, my first response would probably be, sure, he's a great player, but not if he's hitting .050 in the ALCS. Not if he's coming up small in the postseason. And I think that's the other part of Judge's resume that I know he can't touch in late August. There's nothing he could do about that on a Friday night against the Colorado Rockies. But that's the other aspect that needs to change for him to ever get to that level. He's got to have monster Octobers.
Does he hit .050 with Bernie there, with Paul O'Neill there, with Tino there, and all the support? And listen, Derek Jeter is an all-timer. I don't want to take anything away from the guy. I wrote a book about him because I have him 5th all-time among great Yankees. I think Judge will end up ahead of him on that list, whether he wins a championship or not, based on just the fact that the superstar in baseball doesn't have the same impact as he has in football as a quarterback and basketball at any position. So, no, I think that if you surrounded Judge with the same talent that the Yankees had, the same pitching staff, he'd already have a couple of rings and he'd be off to the races. So I just think the Yankee fan is going to say, we understand that, and he doesn't have the same team around him that Jeter did. And if he can just get one to validate everything, I think they'll be willing to put him ahead of Jeter on their own little personal Mount Rushmore.
I'm skeptical, man. I almost think it needs to be multiple. Like, the one thing I've learned about studying the Yankee fan in all my years of watching them, like, I'm independent. I'm a Met fan. I'm a loser. We have nothing, right? And I've watched the Yankee fan over the years, and one is usually not enough. And that's why when I think about this and say, okay, we know he's a better player, right? He's already surpassed it. The best of Aaron Judge is better than the best of Derek Jeter. And like you said, that's not an insult to Derek Jeter. In my opinion, Derek Jeter's the greatest shortstop of my lifetime. I'd put him ahead of Cal Ripken Jr. Saw both of them. I thought Jeter was better. Just my opinion. So I think he's an all-time great player. But I think that Aaron Judge has already surpassed him as a player. But to a lot of Yankee fans, winning and winning often is the thing that makes you a true legend. And I don't even know if one championship would do that. And that's why what Aaron Judge is battling is some of the biggest shadow boxing kind of battles you'll ever see. He has to win often. He has to have a defining October. He has to win a World Series MVP the way Derek Jeter did. And maybe he does, by the way. I'm certainly not one to doubt him. But that's asking a lot, in my opinion, for him to accomplish all of that along with these crazy statistical seasons that he's having. Because I don't think the MVPs and the regular season success, as great as it is, will ever be enough for some Yankee fans to say, yep, that guy passed Derek Jeter.
Particularly now that he has Soto, assuming that the Yankees keep Juan Soto. He now has his Gehrig. He's Ruth, and there's Lou Gehrig, right? So
some may say better, like Marcus Stroman. He said they're better, and I'm not arguing it, but whatever.
They're probably better, just because everyone's better today than they were back then. But I think
that's a cop-out, but I respect it.
Okay, and Derek Jeter had Mariano, the greatest closer of all time, and by secretariat lengths. And Aaron Judge has not had that kind of support at the back end of the bullpen over the course of his career. I don't know. I think Yankee fans are smart enough to celebrate him for who he is and understand that Jeter had a lot more support around him. And I think Judge is going to win. In fact, he might win one this year. But I think if he gets one or two, and one's enough, I think they'll put him ahead of Jeter all time. I would. I think, again, he's the second best player at his peak that I've ever seen in 50 years, including Derek Jeter. So I think they'll get there with him.
You know, Don Mattingly's a guy that pops in a lot of Yankee fans' minds because Don never won anything, right? In the 80s, when he was at his absolute best, and he had a 4.5-year period in which I don't think there's any question Don Mattingly was one of the best hitters in baseball. With that said, he's not Aaron Judge, I mean, just to be fair. But I think the reason why Mattingly has never been punished for not winning as a New York Yankee the way everyone else is punished if you don't win here is that I never thought they had those expectations that they have now. I mean, just listening to this radio station or talking to Yankee fans, every single year, fair or not, there is a championship expectation around this franchise. And when they don't win, it is end of the world. It is Cashman's an idiot. This guy's got to go. This manager stinks. Even Aaron Judge felt victim to it because remember 2 years ago after the MVP year, he was being booed in the postseason.
I remember.
So I think that's also a part of it, and maybe it's just the era we live in, the kind of instant gratification era. But I think winning has almost become more important than it ever was. And you're right. It may happen this year. I mean, the Yankees could win a World Series this year. It's certainly on the table. He can certainly win one next year. He may end up winning 3 World Championships. But I do think that when you compare the greatness of Aaron Judge, and he's entered greatness territory, and you think about Jeter when he walks out to an adoring crowd at Yankee Stadium over the weekend, that's the big separator.
Okay, so let me ask you a question, Evan. How many home runs does Aaron Judge have to hit in his career without a ring to be put ahead of Jeter in the minds of Yankee fans? Because I had a conversation with him about 15 months ago at his locker in spring training. And I said, it's unfortunate, Aaron, because you got off to a late start. You started in the major leagues at what, age 24, going on 25. And so your chance to have the all-time career home run record is compromised by that.
Oh, yeah.
You know, so, but we talked about getting to 600 and 700. And
what did he say?
He said that, yeah, I want to play into my 40s. And I said, if Tom Brady can do it, why can't you? And this is the comparison I made. I said the Patriots and then the Buccaneers basically built a wall around Brady because of his limitations. He was a pocket passer even when he was young, and now that he's old, then that was necessary. So your wall would be the DH position. When you turn age 40, I imagine that's going to be the position you're playing the rest of your career. But why can't you do it if Tom Brady did it? And he said exactly. He said, that's what I've been telling them. And this is right after the contract negotiation. So I imagine that was part of the talks with the Yankees that, yeah, I want that extra year 9, because I'm playing into my 40s. And don't worry, I will not be a diminished asset at that point. So Aaron Judge is a great athlete, and a better athlete certainly than Tom Brady. So I think he can play into his 40s. And then we did the math and sort of averaged out how many home runs would you need to hit per year.
45.
Yeah, 45 to 50 to get to 650, 700. And it's a lot. It's asking a lot out of this guy. But you can't put him in a box because we've never seen a player like him. So your conventional thinking about age and the forces of nature and when guys break down and when they stop hitting home runs, we've never seen an athlete in baseball like Aaron Judge.
Yeah.
So I don't think we can put limitations on him. And I'm open-minded to the possibilities of him playing into his 40s. And if he can stay healthy, which obviously is a big if he can average 45, 48 home runs, he's going to run that total up there.
Well,
he is the fastest guy to 300 in terms of games and at-bats, correct?
Oh, yeah. There's two layers to this. There's, A, can he actually do it? Can Aaron Judge, as you just described, do the math? Can he actually go on a tear over the next 10 years of his career, stay healthy enough, play into his 40s, hit 45, 50 home runs, and actually get to that kind of number? That's question number one. And question number two is,
he did think it was possible, by the way.
Well, I'm glad he does.
Yeah.
I mean, you got to have confidence. But the second thing is, and I think it's the more interesting thing, and I'm not saying this to be a jerk because I'm different than maybe what the Yankee fan thinks. Like, I'm a loser. And I say that with a smile and joy. Like, the teams I root for have won nothing. So my bar on what I love and what I admire from my athletes is obviously a lot less. It's just the reality. I mean, think about it. Think about the teams I root for and the players that I adore. They've won far less than a lot of these other players. I'm just giving you kind of like the observational thought on this. If he hits 750 home runs, let's say he does it. Aaron's right, you're right, Ian. He does it. It's 50 a year, stays healthy till he's 43, and he ends up hitting, maybe doesn't get to Bonds' record, but passes Babe Ruth, right? He gets to 730 home runs, does all of that, doesn't win a World Series. You think he passes Jeter in a lot of Yankee fans' minds?
I mean, if he's at 700, yeah.
I don't think he does.
I don't know.
Winning is the end-all, be-all with these people. And I respect it. I don't say it like in some kind of negative way.
Yeah, I know that. Yeah.
It would be almost empty to a lot of people. Because think about it. Think about 2 years ago.
It's not the NBA. He doesn't play defense. He can't dictate whether pitchers pitch to him. Baseball fans are smart enough to realize that.
You're very rational. The problem is most people aren't.
Well, I grew up a Yankee fan. I was a Reggie and Thurman guy, more a Reggie guy, and I do think Yankee fans sometimes are crazy because they always say, well, October's the only thing that matters.
Right.
Okay. But then if the Yankee team is struggling during the regular season, they go crazy then. Well, you said it's only October that matters, and they're going to make the playoffs. I mean, when people were panicking a few weeks ago about them falling through and not even getting the third wild card, that was ridiculous. That was never happening. So I thought that panic was way off mark. And also, by the way, you said the only thing that matters is October. They're getting to October. There's no longer a one-game shootout in that first round. That's key. And you look at last year, how many games did the Diamondbacks win? 84?
Yeah.
Okay, they made the World Series, right? So the Yankees are going to win far more games than that. They'll be fine. I always thought that the panic was crazy, and Yankee fans are like that. But they forget. They always say, even when they win 100-plus games, all that matters is October.
100%.
But that's true when you win 89 games,
Totally agree.
So I feel like they want it both ways, and it gets out of hand.
No, you're 1,000% right. It's all defined by October. But here's the proof that even hitting 700 home runs, which I think is a long shot, but you know what? I respect the hell out of Aaron Judge thinking he can do that.
Well, listen,
that's amazing.
I talked him maybe into it. I will say that because he was saying at first, he was like, well, because athletes don't want to think that far down the road.
Right.
And you almost jinx yourself a little bit. But I was saying that Tom Brady's doing it at 44, 45. You're a better athlete than him. Why can't, with the DH position, you do it? And he's like, yeah, well, I've been telling him that. Then we looked at the numbers. And so it wasn't like he was eagerly embracing the idea of getting to 700.
Right.
But he didn't dismiss it. Let's put it that way.
Think about 2 years ago, 2022, and it's amazing to say that this season has actually been better than 2022, but it actually has. He may not hit 62 home runs, but look at the RBIs, look at the batting average, look at the OPS. He's had a better season. After the 2022 season ended, and Aaron Judge had this ridiculously amazing historical season, broke the real home run record, right? And I use the fingers because of the steroids. After the season was over and October concluded, nobody talked about that. It was all about getting swept by the Astros. It was all about Aaron Judge getting booed in the postseason. And obviously it was all about his free agency. But in terms of the season, his greatness was forgotten because it was overshadowed by losing. And that's my point. And that's the proof that winning, as unfair as it is, because you bring up a lot of great points. It's not basketball. I agree with you. It's not all on him. Of course I agree with you. But sometimes fairness isn't about perception. And I think what that proved in 2022 and what we're even seeing now, all doesn't matter unless he wins and he performs in a big spot. And I got to tell you, it's incredibly unfair. Like Derek Jeter, and you wrote a great book about him. Derek Jeter got the winning out of the way early.
He did.
He won immediately. So Jeter never faced the, you better win, you better perform. He'd already done it. And you're right, he had a great core around him. So I think that the reaction of 22, and you'll see it this year if they don't win at all, proves that as great as he is, he's got to win. And it's grossly unfair, but that's the reality of Aaron Judge's legacy in New York City. And the only way he even comes close to Derek Jeter, and dare I say surpasses Derek Jeter, is he wins, and he wins a lot.
And that is really unfair because in baseball, that's not the nature of the sport.
I know.
The superstar cannot dominate under certain circumstances if you're not pitched to, if the ball's not hit to you. There are so many things that are out of your control in baseball. It's the craziest sport, maybe outside of golf, which is a different story. But Derek Jeter was like a pro golfer who won a major early and then never had to worry about it.
Right. Yes.
That's exactly what happened with him. And I do feel like this conversation, I'm in a position here where I'm taking things away from Derek Jeter, and I really don't mean to do that.
No, and I don't think any of us mean to. Derek Jeter's a Hall of Famer. He's the greatest shortstop of all time, in my opinion. I may be controversial to some. He's amazing. He's just not Aaron Judge. That's all I'm saying. I mean, and you know what? That's the beauty of Derek Jeter. Because when you guys go out to Yankee Stadium over the weekend, and you go to Old Timers Day, and Alex Rodriguez is out there, and maybe you're explaining to your son or daughter who doesn't remember them. And they're like, hey, Daddy, hey, Mommy, tell me about Alex. Tell me about Derek Jeter. You know what you're going to say? You're going to say, Alex Rodriguez, well, yeah, he was kind of better. He was statistically better. You'll mention the steroids, but Derek Jeter was a winner. And Derek Jeter was ours. A part of the appeal of Derek Jeter, in my opinion, was he was never statistically the best player, but he was still the best. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I sure do. I lived it. I watched it. I covered it. And there was something about that guy. And when my career is about to be over pretty soon here at age 60, the first face I will think of as far as being a columnist in New York City for 4 decades is Derek Jeter's. And there's a reason for that. Not Aaron Judge and Eli Manning and Jalen Brunson, who I think is another guy that you left off that list. If he wins one championship for a franchise that hasn't won in, 50-plus years.
King.
And the way he carries himself, Jalen Brunson only needs one championship.
No, I totally agree.
Okay, so...
By the way, Jalen Brunson and Aaron Rodgers, and it's because of the franchises, 1,000%. You win one,
you're good.
I mean, the statue will be erected before, the confetti even comes down to the ground.
Messier won 5 in Edmonton. Nobody talks about those 5.
Exactly. We'll get your calls coming up next. I love Aaron Judge. I think this has been a joy to watch. But here's the cold, hard reality, and tell me if I'm wrong and Ian's wrong. He better win. 888-808-1019. We'll get to the Mets last night, who began their road trip on a positive note. We will talk about the Jet decision to not play Aaron Rodgers.